Hi, I have with me today Jonathan Grammer, who is a landman and also the chief executive of U.S. Carbon Capture. And today we're going to kind of skip around through some various energy topics and also sort of a rematch on the lay of the land like last time. Thanks for being here and talking with me, Jonathan.
My pleasure, as always.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah. Speaking of minerals, this makes me jump into something. Obviously there's a lot of consolidation going on in the industry. And, we heard about some of it at the NAPE conference, but also, just on what's happening in terms of, transactions to do with, tier one, tier two, all that. Um, what are you seeing or hearing in terms of these mergers and their impact on, your line of business?
Well, it's, I think it's freed up, I want to say the opportunity. It's certainly eliminated the discussion about what to do with everything else.
Mm,
When I say that, I mean the consolidation is consolidated, not just consolidating companies, but where. And it's a great deal of it's the majors and a great deal of it's in the Permian.
yeah.
Um, so what about the rest? What
Mm-hmm.
about all the other $70 oil in the remaining mid-continent regions and the Northwest and to some extent Ohio and Northeast? What about, and I don't have an answer. We certainly have some ideas about how that can be capitalized upon.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can utilize these resources that are still remaining in the other 49 regions of the United 49 states.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's been the biggest change as far as my perspective is if it's a big consolidated, you can't go to the Permian Basin with $20 million
Mm-hmm.
anymore, but there's a lot of $20 million operators and investors out there.
Mm-hmm.
And where's the field that they're going to play on now, because
Mm-hmm.
this seems to get bigger and bigger. I've had this discussion and I think it's correct that much like you have Walmart and Amazon and you have the top four of the S&P 500, it's going to be 4 or 5 oil companies, and that's going to be it.
Yeah.
There'll be the controlling interests that dominate, and it
Mm-hmm.
sure seems to be moving that way. But they're so big, and they have such a large line of sight that they're not going to be able to go out and develop oil fields in northeastern Oklahoma.
Right.
Well, then who is? And who
Yeah.
are going to be those stakeholders and who are going to be those participants?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a clear answer if that's going to be the market that we see in the next year or 5 or 10. If capital will start moving that direction as the game gets too big,
Yeah.
certainly is an interesting conversation. If there's a lot of remaining oil and natural gas in place outside of these large consolidated areas,
Right.
and who are going to be the participants that continue to develop it.
Yeah. No, I I was noticing because there was all the major news consolidation, the 234 billion that was that happened last year, but there's new announcements I've seen. One is Apache, who has a big mid-con representation, and they're the very firm that you're kind of talking about, in fact. And then there was an announcement, I think, in the last couple of days about Chevron and Marathon. No, ConocoPhillips buying Marathon, and they have, Bakken and Eagleford and Haynesville assets that they're acquiring in Guyana. So there is, like you said, there's that center swath, maybe that first round, really focused on the Permian.
Right.
And now you're seeing this continued scrambling about the rest, right?
Well, and I think some of that, and here's the second part of my answer to your question. It's important, and I appreciate you identifying sort of the tiers of
Mm-hmm.
oil and gas operators and why that's significant. Is you have companies that are too big to be a major, but too small to be a major, but too big to be an independent or mid-size. Marathon, Devon, Apache, And what I believe some of the behavior is their bicep is too small as one, combining to get stronger so that they become a major, so that they can avail themselves of this consolidation market. If
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
Exxon's not going to buy a Marathon or a Crown Quest or a a Devon. Devon's a perfect example, kind of right there with Endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
It's too
Mm-hmm.
small to be gobbled up by a major, and so you may see an acquisition and a merger so that they become that size,
Right.
and now they're eliminated at the table of potential targets for a major to buy out. If I
Right.
explain,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, because like a Diamondback Endeavor is now a large independent, so
exactly, yeah.
yeah, so they've kind of fortified. And so that's yeah, it's really, really interesting some of the dynamics going on. And I'll
Yeah,
be
you're going to see that it's just like an athlete or a boxer bulking up for the match if they're underweight, and
yeah,
you're going to see a lot of that. And again, it just adds itself as if the second tier from the mid-size up are getting ready to embolden for that game.
yeah.
What do we do with 60%? I think of the production. I may be wrong. It's a very high number. I got it from the IPA some years ago. Comes from marginal wells in the state of
Mm,
Texas. We're aggregating a lot of smaller wells together in oil and natural gas.
yeah.
Who's going to take over these assets? Who's going to run them? Is there a market at all for them
Mhm.
anymore? Uh,
Yeah.
it's a provoking question. I don't know the answer.
Yeah. I think Oil and Gas Investor magazine would have an answer, or at least try to post
Yeah,
one.
probably so.
um, they tend to write about a lot of that stuff. I hate to switch out of what we were just talking about.
Sure.
It's the most interesting right now, but what is happening with solar and interconnection queues? And it seems like I'm wondering if because of interest rate rises and projects becoming marginal and solar projects are capital intensive and all this, we've seen this dynamic shifting a little bit. What are you seeing in terms of practicality on the ground with solar development?
Well, what I have seen, again, I pull on conversations that I've been a part of, things that either I bring up or are brought to me of late is, and this is a great segue into what happened. I think honestly in the Texas Panhandle, Dallas, and Houston in the last this spring, I've is a narrative suggesting that people are interested in, aside from being able to tie into the queue and grid congestion, but um, what I'll call energy autonomy and safety
Mm,
seems to me of optimum concern.
mhm,
Just in family members and people that I work around, I bet we've talked twice a week in the last 3 months about what is the potential for off grid, small megawatt solar development
mhm,
with battery storage.
mhm,
Where a lot of people think batteries, they think lithium, they think EVs, they think Tesla, and that's where it dies.
mhm,
I wish there was more intelligent discussion, not advocacy one way or the other, about what is the potential of a large scale battery energy storage system.
mhm.